was recently going through some files on my PC and I rediscovered a folder of Word documents from my university days. Now, in computing terms, these files are ancient. They're from the mid-90s. They were done on Windows 3.11 when Word looked like this. And the thought of even using Windows 95 was just a glorious pipe dream. In a fit of nostalgia, I tried to open one of the documents to read, only to be told by Word that for security reasons it couldn't open a file this old. Now, you can get around this by changing the trust settings in Word. But this got me thinking, how can I batch convert all these files to a newer format to prevent losing them, but without using any third-party file converters? Because, well, you just don't know what malware becomes loaded with some of these programs. It can be done using Power Automate, and I'm going to show you how. Here I have a folder of 114 old Word documents. When I try and open one of them at the moment, I'm getting an error saying the file has been blocked because it's Word 2 and earlier. If you want to get around this for the Power Automate batch processing, you can go into your File menu to change this in the Trust settings. So go to Options, Trust Center settings, File block settings, and you can see here that Word is blocking certain file types. So for this exercise, I'll just untick all three and click OK. If you're unsure of the age of your file, just unclick all three like I did. Now when I try and open the file, you'll see that it opens. Next, you'll need to open Power Automate Desktop, and if you don't already have this on your PC, the easiest way to install it is through the Microsoft Store. So I've opened Power Automate on my desktop, and I've already created the flow, so I'll walk you through that. So we go to the Edit option on the flow. As you won't already have a flow, you'll need to use the New Flow option, top left here, to create that. So here you can see all the steps of the flow, and I'll walk you through them one by one. First of all, you need to get the list of the files in the folder that you want to convert. So that will come from the folder option down the side of Power Automate here. So in folder, you will get files in folder, and you just drag that into your flow. Now, I'll close that because I already created it. I'll just go in and edit my step. You select the folder where you've got the original document stored. You're filtering for anything that ends with suffix .doc, so you put star.doc. Include subfolders, you can choose yes or no depending on whether you do have any subfolders there, and then it will just produce this variable called files. The next three steps are to create some variables so that when the process is running, we can monitor what's going on. So to do that, you would go into the variables section and drag in the set variable action. What we have here is a variable called converted, which will start at 0, and as we loop through and convert the documents, we'll increment that. The next variable is used to show how far through the batch conversion we are, and again that starts at 0. And the third one is to provide a count of how many documents we're trying to convert in total. And what you need to do is choose select variable, and we're looking for the files variable that was created in the initial get files in folder step, but we want the count of that. So you double click that, and you can see it puts that variable in there. Now with these manually created variables, you can see they appear in this section at the top, input and output variables, and you'll be able to monitor this during the conversion process to see what's going on in terms of files converted. Next, we have to use a loop to loop through each of the files in the folder. So we go to the loops section and drag in a for each. So it asks you which value you're iterating. So you're iterating the files variable from the get files in folder section, and it stores the current item in a new variable as it loops through. So our first step as part of the loop is to increase the current file variable by 1 so we can see where we are in terms of looping through the whole batch. So you'd use variables, increase variable, and you choose the variable and increase. So in this instance, we've taken the file current variable that we created manually and we're incrementing it by 1. The next step is to break down the file path for the current file to use in the later steps. So we use the file get file path part option. Again, you just drag that in. It's asking you for the file path. Now, as you can see in this one, you don't enter an absolute file path, you just use current item variable, which is created as part of the for each loop that we're looping through. So it takes the current item and it will create a list of variables, which are the root path, the directory, the file name without extension, and the file name extension. We then drop an if loop in. As we're looping through this, we're only looking for Word documents in this instance. So we've used an if conditional loop, drag that in. So we're asking it for if the file name extension, which we created in the previous step. Now in this instance, it's got to lower on the end. So what we've done is file extension and use this to lower option. So it converts the file extension into lowercase text to check against. So if the file name extension is equal to .doc, then carry out the next steps in the conditional loop. Then we're using flow actions from the Word section here. The first thing we're doing is launching Word. We launch it and open the following document, which is the current item variable. I've chosen to make the window visible as it's going through. Advanced is a way you can enter passwords. I would advise when doing this batch conversion that you try and root out any documents initially that have passwords on them and don't include them in the batch, because the passwords are likely to be different. And in my case, given the age of the files, the passwords may be lost in the midst of time. So once you have the file open, you're using the save word flow action. When you've dragged that in, you're saving the file that's open in the current Word instance, which was a variable created in the previous step. You're saving it as, and you choose the docx file format. Now, you do have a lot of options here. If you were so inclined, you could export all your files to PDF. And then the document path is using some of the variables that we created from the file path part section. So we use, I'll just get into that. We're using the file directory where the current file is stored, and then we're using file name no extension, so it's saving it back as the same file name. And all we've done is put .docx on the end, so the file has the same name but a new suffix on it. We then close the Word instance that's being used as part of this loop. Then we increment our converted files variable, so we know how many files we've actually converted so far. So again, you increase variable converted by 1, which again was done from the step is up here, increase variable. The next step we're doing is to move the old file, which is from the file section of the actions. So you want move file. And we're moving the current item into a backup folder, which is another folder I've created on my C drive. We're literally just moving the old file format to the backup folder, so we're not overwriting them or getting the files all muddled together. And that's it. That's all the steps within the flow. The next step is to run the flow and start converting the files. Now, if your flow falls over and you get an error at the bottom of the screen, it's highly likely that it's because you've got a file in there that's still got a password on. Don't worry about that. The error will show you which file it failed on. You can remove that from the folder and deal with it manually. And it's okay, because you're part way through, you can just restart the flow and carry on going through the conversion. You may want to move the files that have already successfully converted out of the source folder, but it shouldn't be a problem if you leave them there. Let's kick this off and I can show you how the variables start incrementing so you can monitor the progress. So you want to run the flow. You'll see over here that it's found that there's 114 files. It's on file 2, it's converted 1, so it's in the process of converting file 2. You can see it looping through the steps here. It may get a bit hung up on one of the files, which takes a bit longer, but as long as you're not getting any errors and the flow's stopping, just let it run. I'll speed up the video here because this will take some time. And there we are, all done. You could see from the clock running in the bottom left-hand corner that this wasn't the quickest conversion, but far quicker than sitting there and doing it all manually yourself. In the variables at the top, you can see of 114 files, it worked through 114, so it completed the batch and it converted 114. Now, if you've got a difference between your current and your converted, that would indicate that you've got some files in your source folder that aren't .doc files in this instance. So you may want to go and check those. If we look at the files in the source folder, we can see that they're now all .docx. And if I go up one level, the backup, you can see the original files have been moved to this backup folder, so you've still got those if there are any issues. The next step is to re-enable the file block settings in your Trust Center. So in Word, go to File, Options, Trust Center Settings, File Block Settings. Now, it doesn't matter that you can't remember which ones were ticked. You can just click Restore Default. Now, you'll see that it, again, won't open the old files. But if I go into the converted ones, same file, opens now, the new format. I hope this has been useful to help you batch convert some older doc files to the newer docx format. Remember, they don't have to be as old as mine, but if you did have to change the trust settings in Word, please remember to change them back. If you have a load of old Excel files that you want to convert to a newer Excel format, then Power Automate will allow you to do that as well. You'll just need to change your script accordingly. And remember, if they are really old, you may need to play around with the trust settings again in Excel. Thanks for watching.